Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our virtual panel discussion titled Transforming Financial Management in the IT Sector. Indeed, the world economy has been battling the effects of the pandemic for the past 2 years, and India was not an exception. Now, while technology has enabled businesses in many sectors to build resilience, its effect across the value chain and the resultant inflationary effect has also impacted the IT sector. But where there is adversity, there is also opportunity. If the Y2K bug helped Indian information technology services companies catapult to the global stage, the disruption caused by the pandemic is giving them an opportunity to move in to the next phase of growth. And this has expanded opportunities from fresh entrepreneurship, innovation, and new business propositions and revenue models. In this landscape, the IT industry needs to rework its financial management strategies. The challenges can range from a lag in tax compliance operations as remote working employees lack timely access to information, to tax implications arising from reconfigurations in supply chains across geographies. Of course, the GST regime has already brought a significant shift for the IT sector with respect to regulatory compliances for a sector that has put India on the global map, evolving towards seamless financial compliance canon as accounting systems need to upgrade and ERPs need to be aligned with GST norms. So change requires effective coordination between tax and technology experts, and redesigning business software can be quite a challenge, especially as a majority of IT firms lack financial management experience. So today we will explore how cutting edge technologies and the power of big data can be leveraged to optimize for taxes and improve profitability for those operating in the IT domain. I'm your host Gautam Srinivasan, and joining me on the panel are Swaroop Ripaka, Director of Strategy at Clear; Hemlata Nevetia, CFO at Allstate Solutions Private Limited. Hema will be joining us via audio for the time being. And next up is Sandeep Darkar, Head of Finance at Sybase Software Private Limited; Ganesh Sankaraman, VP for Finance at Civi; and Vaidyanathan Mahadevan, CFO at Polaris Consulting and Services Limited. Thank you everyone for joining us in this conversation. And of course, before we begin the discussion, here's a message to our viewing audience as well to fill out a short survey form and submit it to us at the end of this talk. All right, let's dive right into the conversation. Ganesh, we'll start with you. Considering Cifi's evolution from being India's first private ISP to India's largest digital transformation company, how has the finance function evolved to contribute to the success of the company? And do you see transactions being more touchless now as automation reaches deeper into finance operations?
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening to all. I think I'm audible to you people.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Cifi is one of the foremost ISP player in the year 1995. And after that, it has traveled a lot. Earlier, it was B2C company, and we have transformed into B2B company. That would take about 5 to 6 years to leave the existing legacy and create some more new legacy as well. So the finance model per se from that year onwards, that year of transformation onwards, that we have to have resilient and more robust finance model so that any sort of situation can be made easy for people to follow. For example, the finance model for B2C is entirely different to B2B. Of course, we had large base for B2C and we have shrunk into a small base of B2B, but the volume has gone up significantly. And earlier, from the writing checks and transferring DD and all, now we are into the platform where I can just make the payment by having a UPI model. And all our transactions happening here is through digital model, digital payment, digital collections. So I don't require to spend time on reconciliation and making whether the collection has come or not. Here, what is important now from the previous, maybe I can say previous decade, is that it is not the question of year-end or month-end reconciliation. What requires today is that real-time data. I think the transformation which has happened for the last 10 years, of course, I would say even for last 15 years, that transformation happened in the finance function is capturing the data and providing the real time for people to people to take decisions appropriately. I think the transformation happened here is that more into no document, more into controls, more into real time than than sort of reconciliation and all other things. That's what I would say, that there's a transformation in terms of finance side.
All right, from a B to C to a B to B operation and the evolution of the finance function therein. That's the story from SIFI. Hema, let me come to you for a sector that has been at the helm of innovation and transformation since the past year and a half. What's the role that technology has played in running your own business?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So honestly, if you look at the mantra for many companies today, and I think the pandemic actually laid it out more importantly for us, is either you adapt or you just die, for the lack of a better word, right? So the rapid convergence of business and technology, it often actually determines competitiveness, and that's how we kind of adopted technology. We're actually in the throes of transformative growth globally. We are developing nimble, adaptable processes. Our operations is a very large one. We do a lot of claims processing. You're aware that we are in the insurance sector. So how is it that we actually make adaptable processes which are driven by data and automation and constant communication? I think these were the key focus areas for us, not just in the time of the pandemic, but even before that, right? And it has now come to, we figured out that technological transformation needs to be more than just another investment. Honestly, it's a complete integration, right? And it also has played a key role in change of focus. We've now moved from reducing costs, which is of course important, optimizing costs, to strategically investing so that we enhance customer experience, we increase revenue and all of that. And we have started spending a lot more on the advertising and thereby expanding our customer base. So for us, technology is is the very fulcrum. Our operations, or whichever part of the operations are, or the entire company's ecosystem, if I were to look at, that's on transformative growth, and that's been adopting the technology of automation, cloud as a service technology, etc. This is where we've been kind of focusing from an organization standpoint.
Absolutely. And we have seen the insurance industry at the forefront of use cases of technology where a lot of the back end work has translated into a lot of front end products. Again, from claims processing to optimizing costs, a whole host of technology applications have worked to make the insurance industry more responsive to customers as well during this pandemic. All right.
And honestly, just the one last point, if you look at the technically savvy crowd that you have today, and if you have to make your products that much more agile, that for the drop of a button, we are able to get options. That's how this organization is moving towards. How does the digital disruption can be used to our advantage? And I think that's where we made good progress. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's always on. It's an always on enterprise for an always on customer. And of course, that changes the dynamics to a significant extent. Let's hear some other transformative stories. Sandeep, I'll bring you in. Sybase prides itself for using new age technologies to provide seamless services and dependable deliveries to its clients. So how do you leverage technology to transform your own financial management?
I would say, fortunately, many years we are working on an ERP, and ERP is kind of catching up with the changes happening in compliances and also the speed of the business. So definitely we are trying to bridge the gap with our own internal IT domain. At the same time, we are running along with the ERP vendors as well to see that we just don't have a bookkeeping system, but more of an intelligent system where the compliance is done at the time of booking the transactions. But I see the speed of the ERP vendors is relatively slow as compared to the changes happening in the compliance field. So we are trying to bridge the gap for the short term through our internal IT domain.
All right. Bridging the gap, still lots more to do, but of course there's lots more possibilities to improve as well, and we'll circle back to that and get some views from Sarup as well on that. But before that, let me come to you, Mr. Mahadevan, to expand a bit further on that point. The GST regime has already brought a significant shift for the IT sector with respect to regulatory compliances, and as the demand for IT services saw a boost post the pandemic, what kind of tech have you deployed at Polaris Consulting and Services for more efficient financial management?
Yeah, I think industry. I mean, as for one thing, what we have seen is the industry in general, right? As the spend of IT across all industries have gone up substantially. That's what you may be seeing in the results of most companies. I mean, internally also for our internal IT journey, also the digitization that has also given a boost, because if you look at our time entry system, right? Earlier, like people were coming to office. Now we have to enable people to record their availability, sitting from. We have to go more digital, right? Like now you have to people like entering their time from their mobile. And not only that, the information like accessibility, like in terms of dashboards, getting real time information on time, that these were some of the initiatives what we have spent substantially over the last, I would say, the 18 months to make all leaders, if you take any information on your pipelines or information on your revenue, information on your cost, I mean all parameters, right? All the sales, all business leaders get information online. Like earlier they used to, people used to have meetings, and they could like exchange information. Now with all this, getting most of your information on the cloud. Well, I mean, that has been a big journey, what we have learned in the last, I would say, 18 months, as we move towards a more digital organization. I think, I would say, funny speaking, if you look at IT companies, right, while they do a lot of services for the external IT, the internal IT, many a time, probably a little bit behind in catching up. But I think, yeah, but this pandemic made everybody the importance of, I mean, internal IT as well. And how do your internal organization become more digital? I mean, that has been our focus, and I think I would say we are getting there.
Absolutely. That goes to the point which Hema was also saying, that it's all working together to create a responsive organization. And as you say, internal IT and external IT, they need to be on the same page to make sure that everything is working in the service of the customer. And at the process, also optimizing costs and, of course, improving growth for the enterprise. Swaroop, let me bring you in at this point in time. You've heard the transformation stories and the optimization stories from SIFI, Allstate, and Polaris and Sybase. So your initial response, your initial thoughts to all these inputs?
No, yeah, this is, I think, fairly interesting, right? Most of the inputs that I've heard, I speak to a lot of CFOs, and this is very much in line with what I hear, right? And specifically, IT, I would say, is probably not at the forefront when it comes to financial transformation of their internal orgs, but it's also not lagging fully behind it. I would say they're somewhere in the middle. And taking a step back, if I were to say, why is there a need for technology in compliance? Right, and this sort of exacerbated from 2017 and now the pandemic, and there are three reasons. First is compliance and supply chain. They were two isolated concepts earlier. Now they're deeply embedded. They're forced to be embedded. You cannot think of supply chain without compliance, and you cannot be compliant yourself. You have to get your entire ecosystem compliant. The second is the government. The government is moving very fast, and they have a lot of data about each and every one of you. What gets talked about is the amount of data Facebook has about you, Google has about you, right? But imagine the amount of data that the government has about you, right? So the amount of deep compliance that's required can only happen with technology, and not just technology that, for instance, will help you take your data and send it to the government, or let's say integrates with your ERP, but it's real-time compliance. Every single invoice that I generate has to be compliant. Every vendor that I onboard in real time has to be compliant, right? Any payment that I make to a vendor, I have to know, is that vendor TDS compliant? Has the GST reconciliation happened at the time of making the payment, right? So compliance now is a real time use case, right? So if I break the world, the Indian enterprises into, let's say, manual or software-led compliance, ERP integrated compliance, and the real-time compliance, we see roughly 5% of enterprises in the real-time compliance domain. 95% of them are not matured enough to reach the real-time compliance domain, and that's the effort we are also in, right? I think we are working closely with a lot of enterprises to move them towards the digital maturity to be able to deploy real-time compliance in their organizations.
All right, so let's see what solutions you have to offer then. I believe Clear is the first company in India with a live, ready-to-use GST software. So tell us a little bit more about this and how deploying such AI-powered solutions can add value for your customers. You mentioned the need for real-time compliance. Give us more details.
Sure, sure, I can, right? So I think, see, the first is getting your GST compliance in order, which is, there are a lot of forms, G1 to G9, right? There is a lot of time that a lot of companies spend in transforming their data. Their data is not immediately recognizable by the government. So there's a lot of automation that needs to be done to be readable by the government, whether it's for e-invoicing, TDS use cases, or the G1 to G9. Second is, there are a lot of data sources now. Your vendors upload something, right? Your customers cut your taxes and then tell something to the government. You have your own ERP. There are some invoices in your vendor's ERP. All of these need to reconcile. And these reconciliations, teams spend a lot of manual activities doing that. What we are doing is we're deploying AI in order to reconcile all of this in an automated manner, right? For instance, nobody is in the office. All of your data sets should be reconciled directly. By the time you're back to the office on a Monday morning, the account payable person should know which vendors to pay, which invoices to pay, and you should know which vendors have not paid, and only the decision making, or for instance, the exceptions have to be handled by humans, right? So that's the solution we're building. For instance, it's called Clear Max ITC for the ITC reconciliations. There's a similar product called TDS Max for the TDS pieces, and there's GST, right? GST and invoicing are core solutions that we have built with, that we started off with, and then we've built this Max suite on top, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as we said earlier, where there's adversity, there's opportunity. So wherever these friction points emerge, there's also technology providing solutions to address them and maybe create new revenue streams in the process. Fair point. Let's get down to the brass tacks in terms of challenges. And I'll start with you, Mr. Mahadevan. You know, the tax rate of IT services and goods that experienced a hike after the implementation of GST. Now, while a single GST tax has replaced, say, VAT, service tax, and excise duty levied on purchase of IT services, there's also been a major change in the IT e-commerce space itself. So tell us a bit more about the challenges that you have faced in this journey.
Yeah, I think one is, while the rate moved from 15% to about 18% is what, but because the set off was available, so it didn't impact from a cash flow point of view. But what were, I think, probably many companies like us who are probably more export oriented, where we face significant challenges is the working capital blockage in terms of the ITC, right? I mean, getting the ITC refund. That has been one big, later on we had to change our business structure to be able to utilize it against exports and claim it as a refund. But but initially, there was some confusion around that, and we had at least a couple of years of ITC blocked up, and the huge documentation if you had to claim it as an ITC refund, all your export invoices, your realizations, and all the data and issues where you had to download. I mean, so much of that actually I would say was one biggest challenge: the blockage of working capital, and the cumbersome process of getting the refunds done. I mean, that's one. And the second, and also the second is the reconciliation of the ITC based on the GSTR 2A. But there are timing return. The vendor, pays will not pay it on time, but where you can only avail once the vendor pays. I mean, these were the two, but probably in terms of the priorities, I would say the ITC blocked up for export companies, right? For most of the software companies were like us, where about 70-80% of your revenues export. I mean, that is the biggest challenge, I think, what I would say.
All right. And in fact, this is the opportunity for Clear, right? Put working capital back in the hands of enterprises. Tell us a bit about how you're doing it, Swaroop.
Sure. So I think I just want to start off, right? This is a non-trivial problem. It is extremely tricky, right? Because it's not just working with your systems, the enterprise systems. It is working with the vendors, and it's also working with the government. Bringing all of these people together and deeply embedding into the enterprise's ERP, right? It's a very non-trivial problem. In fact, we would not have been able to attack this problem without our war chest of $100 million in funding, right? The only reason we're attacking this head on is because of that firepower. The way we do this is it's not just integrating to your ERP. Of course, we integrate into an enterprise's ERP, right? But also in real time, pulling the data from the ERP, transforming it, and doing the reconciliation with the government's data in real time again, right? Without any human intervention, leveraging a lot of AI to be able to tell specific invoices, and then a vendor being able to log in to the platform, right? A vendor cannot log into your ERP. ERPs will not be enough, right? They are very good to run an enterprise, but they are very bad when it comes to a supply chain network type of a problem, getting your vendors in and getting the government in, right? So it's a layer on top of your ERP where all of the smart reconciliations happen in real time, and then vendors will be able to log in real time and then know which are the specific invoices where you have not they have not claimed, and hence you are not going to pay them, right? You can hold partial payments in real time, which the vendors if the vendors do not file. So it's almost as if you're putting your entire ITC journey, which all of the panelists said, right, is so painful, on autopilot. Right? You automate it, you forget it, then the entire working capital, our estimates are it eats up to 5 to 7% of the input tax credits get blocked because the vendors do not necessarily file on time, right? All of this turns to zero because it's now you've automated all of this, right? You don't need to go invoice by invoice. You've already held payments, so technically your working capital impact should go to zero right when you deploy the software. Right? So it's a technology-led solution in addition to having a clear view of compliances.
All right, let's also look at the impact on finance cycle, considering we are in an always on world, as we discussed. And Ganesh, let me bring you in at this point. Many finance cycles today are driven by technology and data processing limitations. Now, things happen on a regular schedule because that's the only way they can happen. So when information becomes instantly available to those who need it, traditional cycles become unnecessary, and that frees up people to focus on discovering new insights and acting on them. So I want to get your thoughts on this, on how the new normal of financial cycles is going to pan out, considering you have so much data and you have solutions to make sense of that data.
Okay, some of the panelists also mentioned about how they have circumvented to the COVID situation during lockdown situation, how they have overcome the situation. In fact, the company like CIFI, we have started the journey before the pandemic situation as well. Like we have been raising invoices digitally in 2018 onwards. So to the extent, of course, we don't require any physical signature, and we have been following the digital signature from 2018 onwards. I think that's what I would like to see, that companies should be made available to the customers at any point in time, irrespective of the fact that there could be a sort of disruption or a sort of a pandemic situation. I think we have to be at least 3-4 years ahead of our customers, ahead of our competitors, ahead of our vendors. So to the extent, I think we should be thinking ahead. Coming back to this question, that of course financial model is very, very important, and all our invoices being raised on real time, and it is recorded on a real time basis. All our POs are being raised digitally since 2018 onwards. To the extent, I think we are, to some extent, I would say we are ahead of the companies who have started the journey in 2019 after maybe impacted on the COVID situation.
So how has that impacted the quality of your reporting?
Quality of the reporting have increased substantially, because as I said that the informations are really readily available at any point in time, and it is getting recorded on a real-time basis, and it has been shown in the ERP. Who are following the ERP, it will be done on a real-time basis. I think the person has to take decision on some of the information on the financial matters, some of the information on the qualitative matters. I think on financial matters, on documentary evidence, I think people should not wait for even a day's time to get the information and then take a decision. I think to that extent, if any of the companies working towards that, has to be made available, that all the informations are readily available. And of course, everybody's interest, everybody's aim is to eradicate work. So to the extent, whether it's going to be Excel or any other form or PPT, so we have to come out of this, and all the information should be made available from their ERP system itself. Say, for example, in fact, even my previous stint, I used to prepare the financial information to the extent of daily profitability through ERP. So some of the information can be made by three total budget number. I think to that extent we can make use of ERP to make the real-time data. Here, in addition to that, all the process has to be made by way of eliminating the non-core activities. Every process will have at least 25 to 30% of non-core activity. If you look at how to get out of this non-core activity and make use of the employees to work 100% efficient, I used to tell my team members saying that you eliminate 1/3 of your activity. If you eliminate 1/3 of your activity, automatically your mind will find a way to digitize or identify non-core activities itself. So by that, the efficiency of the employees associated will go up, and automatically you have to move towards digitalization itself. Here, there is no checks being prepared. There is no physical letters to be prepared. If you are going towards digitalization by having digital signature, by having online approval, by having approval connected with the ERP, I think we have to go towards that. Another point, of course, I always feel that government is moving towards digitalization than the private players itself. Think of a situation if GST was not there, we are still having VAT, service tax, and other things. What should have been the case during 2020? We have to go to service tax department for filing physically and VAT filing physically. I think we have to acknowledge the fact that government is also ahead of this situation at least 2-3 years before itself.
Absolutely. It's coming together of all factors, right? Because from all sides, you're getting support from technology, from government, and of course, from within your enterprise, and customer expectations are changing as well.
Exactly, because it's connecting all the dots. It's connecting from vendor to customer. It covers all the supply chain, the people's connected to the supply chain. I think that if government can do with all the the powers and complexities, I think each company can do much in advance is what I'm saying.
All right, Hema, let me come to you for your response. Considering what we have discussed on finance cycles today, getting new power through the use of technology and the quality of reporting itself improve. Your thoughts on how things are going to pan out and how the quality of financial reporting is going to improve through the use of technology.
Sorry,
Ganesha, we're just going to Hema for her thoughts.
Okay, sure.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Hema.
Thank you, Gautam. So when we actually, 3 years ago, we implemented S4HANA. Obviously, we didn't know that we would get into this, and as difficult as it is to believe that despite being a technology company, it was our accounting system was insourced from EY and they were on Tally. So we actually transitioned it to S4HANA just on time. And because it's a cloud-based thing, all of our reporting, whether it's a segment-wise, you look at IT, ITES, etc., or the SEZ, we are actually operating out of SEZ units. So a large extent, we have the GST exemptions happening, etc. But then I would say that today the ERP system, it helps us capture a lot of the information that you need. You can have cost center-wise P&L for MIS purpose. For your internal reporting, for tax purposes, you can have the segment-wise reporting. I think a good ERP system, absolutely critical for us to ensure that our reporting is seamless. But do we have the proactive analytics as yet? I don't think so, because if you're looking at customization of TDS codes for goods, default vendors, etc., the other examples where tax and technology team need to discuss and come to a consensus so that you're having the appropriate tax reduction and data management, right? That part, I think, is still a little nascent. We are still trying to figure out, because the government wants the reports in a particular way. We have our systems that give us information in a good way, but the analytics has to come together to kind of make sense of what information we are getting it so that we are able to file the respective returns. That part is still, I would say, manual, but then to a large extent, we've come a long way, I would say. Maybe it's just about a 10 to 15% manual versus 80-85% just coming in from the system the way we would like it to be.
All right, but how do you address the coordination issue, Hema? What are your thoughts? The coordination between tax experts and technology teams, one of the biggest hurdles still. How does technology help you address this?
Yeah, I mean, the technology teams obviously do not understand the nuances. So if I go to S4HANA guy and I say, I want this, he says, you will get ABC. you figure out how you want to do the E and the F, right? And it is a bit of a struggle in helping them appreciate where we are coming from, because the tax experts want to ensure there has to be proper reporting, maintaining the financial data, and blah blah blah. And the technology says this is the gamut of what I can offer to you, right? But you do find a mid part, so you do understand how can I optimize my reporting structure, get all the data that you need, and then the final leg where I have to do the tax compliance piece of it, that probably becomes a lot more a customization that is done by the team on the ground. And here is where I'm really intrigued by what Swaroop had to say on clear tax. I'm going to touch base with you after this call to just understand if that 20% of our efforts can also be automated.
Absolutely. Swaroop, actually, your thoughts on this intersection challenge between tech and tax teams. How do we address that? What's your perspective?
Sure. I think just before that, I'd like to add to what, for instance, Ganesh said, right? There's, if I ask this question, do you think the government is done with the GST reforms? Is that in steady state, right? I hear that splits most CFOs that I speak to right down in the middle. And my view is the government is not done. There is still a lot to go. The government is going to adopt technology a lot more. So I'm with Ganesh on that, right? I'll give two anecdotes. So one would be the fast tag system, right? And the NIC systems are being connected, which means the government knows exactly when the trucks are crossing a certain state or whatever limit, right? So they'll know exactly when your e-way-bill validity, whatever. They're now also thinking of connecting your direct tax system and an indirect tax system, right? They're thinking of a real-time system in the direct taxes. What this means is all of your systems have to be coherent, right? It's not just about eliminating manual tasks while complying with the government, right? You have to think broader than that. And then I think just adding, for instance, to what Hemlata mentioned in your question, right? So there is, as I mentioned, an intersection of technology and compliance that happens. Right? A lot of technically, if you think about it, you shadow a person in your office, right? Go to the absolute doer who's actually doing all of this, extracting data from the ERP, doing the transformation. Shadow that person for an hour. You will immediately recognize it's not 30%, 80% of that person's job can be automated, right? You can automate more than 80% of that job with technology, and then deploy that person to a lot of things that actually adds value to that person's life and also to your company. Right. So that's where I think my personal mission and our company's mission comes in, right? Is to fully automate this task of complying with the law, transforming the data from your ERP and then complying with the law, understanding all of the data sets that exist in different spaces and ensuring there's no compliance risk for you. And third is there is actually a lot of value loss that happens. It's usually hidden, right? There is a lot of, for instance, you do procurement optimization, you do, for instance, manpower optimization, you do spend optimization. People, when they look at the tax line item, they don't really think of tax optimization through a technology lever, right? You would bring in, for instance, a Big Four consultant or whatever to do a bunch of analysis at the end of the year and tell you, hey, you should have done this, you could have done that to save money, right? But even that part of the problem could technically be automated. That's what we're also thinking of doing, is essentially saving taxes through technology, right? It's about automation for you, which is saving time. It's about giving you peace of mind, which is, I'm not at risk. It's I can sleep peacefully at night. And the third is actually saving money, right? Optimizing the tax line item for you. So those are the three benefits I would say that deploying technology into taxes can do for you.
All right, using taxes to save technology. There's a marketing line if you have one. And usually the reticence comes from not seeing proof of concepts. But as we see more proof of concepts emerge, I'm sure a lot of the players will jump on the bandwagon and say, why aren't we using that? At this point in time, let me bring in Sandeep. Sandeep, you work with a lot of independent software vendors. Have you faced any issues with non-GST compliances? And if you do, what's the impact like on a large business like yours, financially or operationally?
Yeah, I will echo the comments made by Madhavan and Swaroop as well. Probably government is moving very fast and they are going to move with the same speed, connecting various compliance systems. And I believe these small and medium enterprises are way behind in this curve of compliances. Their speed is too small as compared to the large enterprises. Large enterprises, to that extent, were fortunate that they were already automated their internal processes. ERPs and digitalization was almost up to a point. So it is only the incremental efforts they required to do. Of course, there is a lot to be done in that area as well. But what I see in that the small and medium enterprises are yet to catch with the large enterprises, and that is really hurting your entire procurement decisions and the supply chain decisions as well. Not only that, the government wants their kind of control responsibilities to be kind of a transit to the large enterprises, where they want at least to B2B kind of a transactions to be validated by the large enterprises for their supply chain. To give an example, this NRT kind of a cases where the enterprises are expected to see that the NRT vendors are doing their GST compliances as well, and a regular follow-up has been done. Because I believe the government is soon going to come up with the GST ratings, and according to GST ratings, the letters are already started issued by the government to large enterprises to discontinue the next level transaction with the non-compliance. I think it is going to impact the procurement decision a lot. That is one part, and second part, as Mr. Madhavan has said, it started impacting the working capital cycle as well. Even though we are operating from the SEZ premises, a large part of our business is still coming from the STPI premises, where the GST is definitely a part of our working capital cycle.
All right. So, Swaroop, do you think invoice financing, invoice discounting, that's going to become the new norm for a lot of the companies, considering if we bring together all the issues, especially around the value chain, to address at least one key part of the issue, this might be the answer.
Absolutely. So, you just take a step back and look at any country that implemented e-invoicing, right? That's the journey they follow. They implement e-invoicing, which is a real-time validation, right? Then after 2 to 3 years, invoice discounting early payment programs start to emerge, and within 5 years, that almost becomes the norm, right? 20-30% of the vendor invoices are paid early with a discount being given to the enterprises. And why does this happen? Right, we closely observe this because we are now entering into invoice discounting ourselves, and hence you see tax being dropped from our name, right? It just says clear. So why does this happen is because you could not, even if you wanted to, right? A lot of companies could not deploy invoice discounting or early payment programs earlier because it took a lot of time for you to even close your books. If you did not even know what is the source of truth for an invoice with your vendor, if there is no source of truth, how would you even, if it takes 30 days for you to close the books, that's the vendor payment terms most companies have. Now with e-invoicing, you can close your books almost every single day, at least your purchases, right? You have a source of truth at the end of the day, and you can in real time know, I can discount this invoice by so much. You can arrive at it through technology, and you can provide real-time credit to your vendors while at the same time getting a discount for yourself, right? So there is a ton of value unlock that happens for the enterprises, and your vendors get a lot of working capital that they are so hungry for, right? They would rather do business with you as opposed to some of your competitors.
All right, as we head to the last leg of the conversation, let me ask a question to all the panelists. And the question is finance entering a golden age of technology? Are your roles going to be far more interesting than what they were 5 years ago? Ganesh, your thoughts on this? Is finance entering a golden age of technology, considering, cloud becomes the norm for ERP, financial applications and microservices are seen to be proliferating. Enterprises soon will be able to drastically reduce the complexity and cost of technology without sacrificing functionality. So your roles become much more richer and much more enabling. So your thoughts on this? Are we entering the golden age?
Absolutely. The digital transformation has accelerated to a large extent, and thanks to COVID, and everybody believed that things can be done in the offline mode itself, online mode itself. So to the extent we should have implemented some sort of digital transformation in 2026, we are doing it right now itself because of this lockdown situation. I think from my side, I would say that we are providing cloud services as a company, and we are utilizing the cloud as well for our operations as well. So I am both service provider and the service receiver as well in cloud.
You're in the best position possible.
Best position. And I would say that for the last 6 months, particularly after the relaxation happened, particularly for the last 6 months, people are moving towards cloud, and it's a good sign that people started believing that that is a next level of transformation that should happen. I think that's a starting point of their transformation journey. And people used to have servers at their respective places, and they are not in a position to connect with other branches and other locations and all. To the extent they started moving to cloud, I think it's a good sign for a company to think. Second thing, that the data which can be retrieved and got the transition. For example, if the data is generated out of different countries and different locations, it should be available for the processing zone, and to the extent cost can be reduced. Here, as we are a service provider, we come across a case where people are having a sort of smaller, a sort of shared services model where they can reduce their cost for operational purposes as well. And those thought process have increased during this lockdown period. I think there's a good sign to have it. It is not the question of only for finance. Finance is a part of a whole basket. I think all parameters like commercial, marketing, production, everything has to be interconnected in the whole journey. And the use of ERP has increased significantly. And people are moving towards the traditional way of handling things and traditional way of recording the transaction. They are moving towards digital way. And even if you look at during this lockdown period, the investors or stakeholders have given a lot of importance to the companies who are continuously providing the information to the investors on a regular basis. See, some of the companies during the lockdown period, they are not connected with the investors on any other manner. So I think technology has increased their sort of communication, better communication to the investor. I think that is also a part of the whole improving yourself and improving your visibility into the stakeholders. Since we are actually moving towards cloud, and we are also providing services to the clouds, I think there's a good sign. We have seen that people are moving towards cloud.
All right. Mr. Mahadevan, your thoughts as we sum up the discussion. Is finance entering a golden age of technology?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you take our experience also, right, I think the digitization journey, and particularly organizations like us who are globally spread, like compliance, say you have operations in some part of Europe. So you need to also be, because of the increased governance on the board, and we need to know what's happening in those. So I think the compliance things like compliance monitoring too, right, and contract life cycle management. So a lot of these investments, and not only in finance, right. I think as Ganesh said it, even in our resourcing, right. How can AI be used in being able to forecast your demand, right, in your resource management? So all of them, see a lot of companies. I would say I think this increased digitization, how we can use AI. And all other tools to be able to make better business decisions. I think when that is going to increase only from here as organizations grow more global and probably more complex as well.
All right, Sandeep, your thoughts, and then after that, Hema and Swaroop.
Yeah, as I said, the compliance is more and more interconnected and more externally controlled. I think the CFO is having multiple hats. Sometimes he has to be an active CTO, and most of the times he has to be an active CIO as well. He has to ensure that whether like it or not, but he's participating in most of the business decision to ensure the speed of the transaction meeting the compliance speed as well. And technology is catching up with those speed as well. So I think today's CFO role is more outside his cabin than inside his cabin.
Well, it could be Chief Enabling Officer. Maybe that's the new designation we could look at. Hema, your thoughts on this topic of whether finance is entering a golden age of technology?
It's already entered, Gautam. If I just dial back a bit, I think because we have now the ERP, the disruptive technology we've put in place, it just ensures that we moved away from an accountant mindset to become more business enablers. We're actually joined to the hip with business. We're taking part in strategy. Accounting is important, but then it is something that has to happen largely from the system, and you don't need to be doing manual interventions there. So whether it's, we don't accept any more manual invoices, or for that matter, manual expense claims as well. We have Concur, which kind of just everything digitized today, right? And then we are in the heart of what's happening in the business, and so much so that we're also looking at shared services landscape increasing in India. From moving jobs, a large chunk of the jobs from the US to India, how do we take care of that, etc. So that's the next journey that we are on. So I would say, yes, we've come a long way, and the future ahead is just
lots more to go. There's a road ahead to travel as well, but you've learned a lot in this journey so far, so I'm sure the journey ahead will be more enriching. Swaroop, let's come to you for the last word. The golden age, is it here for finance, especially now that technology enables it?
Yeah, I would definitely say so, right? And I'll maybe also ask the panelists to think back, right? Think back to, for instance, your college days, and imagine if you were in, would you be, are you doing what you would have thought in 2020? Does finance look the same, right? Whatever, 10, 20, 30 years after your college, right? So think back now, it'll have the same amount of transformation in the future as well. Right, if you look at 2020 to 2030 and 2040, right, 10, 20 years ahead, the pace of technology evolution will be much faster. We are not yet done, right? We are only at an inflection point. You cannot even imagine the amount of transformation that is ahead of us. It's going to be an exciting as well as a scary world for a lot of folks, but we are in for a ride, definitely.
All right. Will it be saving taxes or improving profitability? What's going to be the focus for enterprises, Swaroop?
It'll be both, right? I mean, obviously the first means the second, but what matters to most enterprises is the bottom line at the end of the day, right? It's bottom line while at the same time having sanity, right? You want to save money, you want to improve your profitability, but not kill your teams in the process. And not having sleepless nights. So having all of this put together and delivering value to your business.
Well, there you go. The power of technology helping bring to life that phrase, show me the money. All right. That brings us to the end of today's discussion. Thank you to everyone for sharing your insights and the experiences that you've faced while traversing this landscape, and technology makes it interesting. And as Hema said, we've come so far. There's lots more ground to cover. So let's see where things go from here, a year or two, or maybe 5 years from now. And of course, a big thank you to everyone who's tuned in as well. And I'd also like to thank Clear for partnering with us for today's session. And just a reminder to our audience again to fill out and submit the survey form as we conclude this webinar. Until next time, this is Gautam Srinivasan signing off. Have a great day.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Nice meeting you.